You know, there's a book in the Old Testament that the very first Christians held in such high regard, they gave it a special nickname, a name that's usually only for Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They called it the Fifth Gospel. Now here's the wild part. The man who wrote it never even met Jesus. He lived and died more than 700 years before the first Christmas. His name was Isaiah.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth did a guy who never heard one of Jesus' parables, who never stood at the foot of the cross, end up writing the most quoted Old Testament book in the entire New Testament? It's a real puzzle, especially because for most of us, trying to read Isaiah is, well, it's a pretty confusing experience.
And yeah, that confusion makes total sense. When you open it up, the book feels like two completely different works just slammed together. One half is all fire and fury, full of warnings and judgment. And then the other half is just filled with this incredible tenderness and comfort. It's almost like a lullaby. It feels completely contradictory.
It doesn't seem to make sense, unless you grasp the one single powerful idea that holds all 66 chapters together. See, Isaiah isn't just a random collection of sermons. What you're actually reading is one man's 40-year argument that God's holiness, the very thing we assume pushes him away from us, is actually the very reason he refuses to let us go.
So, how do we unpack that? Well, it all starts with the moment that changed everything for Isaiah. A vision of holy fire that basically hands us the key to unlock the entire book.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is about 740 BC, and the capital, Jerusalem, is in shock. Their king, Uzziah, who had reigned for over 50 years, an entire generation had never known another king, he's just died, and his reign ended in total disaster. In this huge act of pride, he stormed into the temple to burn incense, a job reserved only for priests. And for that, he was instantly struck with leprosy and had to spend the rest of his life in quarantine, totally cut off.
So you have this massive political chaos. The earthly throne is suddenly shockingly empty. And it's right in that moment of crisis that a young Isaiah walks into the temple and sees the real throne, the one that is never, ever empty.
And hovering above this throne, he sees these beings called seraphim. Now we really need to slow down and get the Hebrew here, because it's important. The word seraph literally means burning ones. So forget any idea of gentle, glowing angels. These are creatures made of pure fire, right there in the immediate presence of God.
And what are these burning ones crying out, over and over again? One word, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Holy, holy, holy. That single word, it's the absolute heartbeat of this entire book. It shows up more in Isaiah than in the rest of the Old Testament combined. But Kadosh doesn't just mean morally perfect. Its root meaning is about separation, about otherness. It describes something so utterly distinct that there's nothing you can even compare it to. And when the seraphim shout it 3 times, they're using this Hebrew way of expressing the absolute superlative. It's like they're saying, God is holy beyond any category we could possibly imagine.
So what's Isaiah's reaction? You'd think he'd fall on his face in worship, right? Nope. He cries out in sheer terror. Woe is me, for I am undone. He feels like he's coming apart at the seams. God's perfect holiness hasn't inspired him. It's just revealed the infinite, terrifying gap between them.
But then, the paradox happens. One of those burning creatures takes a burning coal from the altar and touches it to Isaiah's lips. Now, this should have vaporized him, right? But instead, it purifies him. It heals him. The very holiness that should have consumed Isaiah is the very thing that makes him clean. And that, right there, is the thesis of the entire book.
Okay, so with that vision in our back pocket, the book's confusing structure suddenly starts to make perfect sense. Let's take a look at how this one single insight helps us unlock the whole thing. So check this out. For a long time, people have noticed this fascinating little parallel. The book of Isaiah has 66 chapters. The first 39 chapters deal mostly with judgment. The last 27 chapters shift dramatically to comfort and hope. It's an exact mirror of the Bible itself. 39 books in the Old Testament, 27 in the New. It's like the first half diagnoses the problem, and the second half announces the cure.
One scholar, Alec Motier, he suggested a brilliant way to see the book. He said Isaiah is basically painting a portrait that develops over decades, and it comes in 3 distinct parts. He calls them the Book of the King, the Book of the Servant, and the Book of the Anointed Conqueror.
So, the first portrait is of a coming king. Isaiah says a child is going to be born, but then he says his name will be Mighty God, El Gabor in Hebrew. That's a name used for God himself.
So right away, Isaiah is describing a ruler who is somehow, impossibly, both a human child and the creator of the universe.
But the portrait doesn't stop there. It keeps shifting. It gets deeper and more complex, until all three of these seemingly separate figures just stunningly merge into one single person.
As we move into the second half of the book, that image of a mighty king gives way to something completely different. It's a quiet, gentle, suffering servant. And his mission is going to end in what is, you could argue, the most shocking chapter in the entire Old Testament. In Isaiah 53, we get this picture of someone who is despised, rejected, a man of sorrows. Now, the Hebrew word for sorrows here, it isn't just sadness. It's talking about deep physical anguish, the kind of pain that literally bends a person's body over. This is a portrait of someone being absolutely crushed.
And then we get the crucial detail. Isaiah says this servant carried our sorrows. The Hebrew verb he uses here, saval, doesn't just mean to carry something, like you carry groceries. It means to bear a burden that is so heavy, it actually changes the shape of the one carrying it. 700 years before the cross, Isaiah is describing someone who absorbs the crushing weight that was meant for other people.
And this all comes to a climax centuries later. Jesus is in a synagogue in his hometown Nazareth. He unrolls the scroll of Isaiah, reads a passage about an anointed one sent to heal the brokenhearted, and then he sits down and makes this absolutely staggering claim. He says, "Today this scripture is fulfilled." He was declaring that the king, the servant, and the anointed one, they were all the same person. They were him.
Which brings us right back to where we started, doesn't it? Back to that vision in the temple and this whole idea of a holiness that acts like a fire that saves.
Isaiah's favorite title for God by far is the Holy One of Israel. He uses it all the time. But what's so incredible is when he uses it. He uses that exact same title when he's talking about judgment and when he's talking about comfort. Think about that. For Isaiah, the same holiness that has to expose sin is the very same holiness that refuses to abandon the sinner. Salvation and holiness are the same impulse in God.
You see this from the get-go, right in the very first chapter. After laying out all of Israel's rebellion, God doesn't say, "Go clean yourselves up and then we can talk." Instead, he extends this amazing invitation. Come now, let us reason together. He's the one who initiates the negotiation. He leans in and says, let's figure this out. And really, that's the question Isaiah's message has been echoing for 2,700 years. It asks every one of us to consider this. What if the very holiness of God that you're afraid of, the thing you're convinced creates all this distance, is actually the very thing that refuses, with a burning, fiery intensity, to ever let you go?